So this morning I woke up and I feel blah today. So I decided to open my Bible and see what the universe wanted to share. And it opened up to Hosea and then Joel, right? And Hosea talks about humility that turns into power, that then turns into pride, and that then turns into collapse. And the quote is, "You didn't fall because you were weak, you fell because you forgot what made you strong." And I've touched on this, so I'm not sure why. Now I know why I'm being brought back to this. I don't know how to turn this into something that's going to be beneficial. And I wrote down, when people and leaders start trusting their own constructs over truth, things begin to become unstable. And so it's like, what is a construct exactly? And a construct are things that humans create that they begin to trust in, obey, or depend on as if they were the ultimate truth or authority. Not physical idols, per se, for most. It's systems, identity, beliefs, and structures. It's taking something that's limited, man-made, or incomplete and elevating it to something that is unquestionable. When tools become authority, when systems replace truth, and when creation replaces the creator. And some real-world examples of this would be, the healthcare system. The system is created to support care, but over time, those systems, the goals, which are the CPT codes, the documentation rules, and the productivity metrics, they become the goal instead of taking care of the patient. And so a visit is considered successful because it was coded correctly, not because the patient was helped. So you see, it's kind of like these things. It's like the patients or the providers rush care to meet volume. It's these constructs that we have created that's systems in order to help, but end up hurting because they become the authority in all of this. And so the construct for healthcare is, if it is documented and billable, then it equals quality, and that is so far from the truth of what healthcare is meant to be and why we built the system. So crazy. Some other examples is in leadership and organizations. With companies, they build structures, titles, hierarchies, performance reviews, but then people start equating position with wisdom. They think that their leaders are always right, or high performers are overused because they can handle it. That's not the case. And dysfunction is ignored because the results are coming in. And the construct is that authority equals alignment, and it doesn't always mean that. Authority is only man-made, right? And then another example is personal identities. People build identities based on rules and survival patterns, such as pleasing, overperforming, and then they start living as if that identity is who they are, not something that they have learned. And then that turns into, I am only valuable if I am needed. If I stop pretending, I lose belonging. My worth is tied to how much I carry. And so the construct here, this man-made thing, is my role equals my worth, and that's not true. That's conditioning. And then just like money and systems as well. We create systems around income, status, achievements, but then they become the definition of success. Someone can look successful but still be completely internally misaligned. And these are things that people don't take into consideration. Like, what is success? Is success tons of money? No, it's not. Even successful people say that. They feel like they are still missing something. So, yeah, it's just, visible success does not always equal real success. And then there's, culture and belonging. The construct is, if I follow the rules of the system, then I'm safe. And that is not true either. That is not true either. So there is a pattern behind all of this, behind the people, the leadership, and the systems that we build. And that is that we begin with dependence, learning and building and aligning our beliefs or whatever it is to a certain goal, right? And then we move into growth. We've got the people, we've got the alignment, and then we create momentum, we grow, and we create this stability. Growth creates comfort, and that's wonderful. That's what growth is supposed to do. It's supposed to create comfort. Comfort creates confidence, which is amazing. So these first four of this pattern are wonderful, but this is where it kind of goes off on its own misalignment. Confidence, when left unchecked, becomes pride. Pride then leads to disconnection. Disconnection then leads to misalignment, and misalignment eventually becomes visible breakdown. And so by the time that the breakdown is visible, it has already been forming underneath the surface for a long time. You see this all throughout history, through all sorts of stuff. Like, it's not an uncommon pattern. We just wish that it won't happen to us, and eventually it does. I've written down so much. So in Joel, there's only 3 chapters in Joel. And Joel in chapter 1 describes the total devastation, which is the wake-up call. And it talks about the locust, right? The locust plague destroys everything. The crops are gone, the joy is gone, the provision is gone, and it really isn't about the bugs. It's really a symbolic meaning of a complete system breakdown. And this is where the locusts are identified, symbolically as burnout, conflict, loss in resources, emotional exhaustion, and then just system failure in general. So these are not obstacles, they're invitations to examine what is no longer aligned. And that is what chapter 1 is trying to teach you, is the wake-up call. These are just symbolisms. Like, if you see these things in your business, in your company, in the systems that you partake in, heed the warning. Heed the warning. Chapter 2 in Joel, the first part of it anyway, talks about the alarm and confrontation. So the tone kind of escalates, and a trumpet is blown in this chapter. Oddly enough, my car alarm went off yesterday for no reason. an overwhelming force begins to approach, and so consequences can no longer be ignored in this chapter. The locusts are here, they're taking away everything, and the only warning that can shift this is when God says, "Return to me with all of your heart," and he does not mean surface level or optics or outward displays of performance of worshiping God and worshiping the creator of all things. He means real internal alignments, like actual internal change, like looking at your wounds and fixing them, figuring out where the pride came in at, and really examining it so you can have this internal change within yourself. You open up your heart, you open up your mind, you open up all these different areas that's inside of you in order to create real change, in order to connect to something bigger. So the solution in this chapter, this part 1 chapter, was never external changes. It was always about internal alignment. Chapter 2, part 2 talks about restoration and overflow. So once you find that internal alignment, you open up the beauty within inside you as a human being, like the light that makes you who you are, your internal energy, right? When you shift that, everything changes. The rain returns in the chapter, so the crops begin to return. Joy returns, and then the famous promise of, "I will restore to you the years that the locust had eaten." And that's what, in my interpretation of it, is that's what he means, is when you fix yourself internally, then your external world will mirror that. And you will recover the time that you lost, the energy that was lost, and just your capacity to hold things even more. You become stronger. Chapter 3 was about, which was the final chapter of this book, was justice and rebalancing. So the final stage is nations are judged, the wrong is addressed, and order is restored. And the famous line inside this chapter is, "Multitudes and multitudes in the valley of decision." And this is where the moment where things are seen clearly and decided accordingly. This is where justice and rebalancing comes into play after you have done the work. And I know this because I speak from experience, which is insane to me still, that this book, and I've never been one to read the Bible. Like, I grew up, my family was very religious, and the hypocrisy that I was surrounded by made me pull further and further away from the religious idealisms. And so coming back to this and reading these books and it mirroring my journey is just incredibly mind-blowing to me. It's just mind-blowing to me. Yeah, and so I know that this is accurate because I've lived it unknowingly. And it mirrors my journey exactly to the T. So I wrote down, leadership isn't just about driving outcomes, maintaining stability, and protecting systems. It's about ensuring what is being sustained is actually aligned with the truth. Because if it isn't, the system will eventually correct itself, and that correction will not feel gentle. It will be a complete and utter collapse. So responsibility isn't just to lead, but it's to stay aware of what we are building, sustaining, and restoring. Because I don't want to be someone who maintains something that looks stable on the outside but isn't true, or protects systems that quietly harm other people, or confuse output with alignment. I want to be someone who sees that drift early, chooses truth over comfort, and builds systems that can hold both structure and integrity, both structure and soul. The most dangerous moment in any system isn't what breaks, it's when it appears to be working but is no longer aligned. I don't know if I'm supposed to say this as a warning to someone or just share my thoughts on it and share my truth on it. And hopefully this helps whoever's listening in some form or fashion, to bring insight into whatever situation you're in. But my job is to communicate my lesson for today, and that is what I have done. Yeah. You guys take care.